Oh, God, no.
Yeah, and that's Matthew. Matthew wasn't here, was he? I didn't see that. Yeah.
Oh,
Yes. She's trying to. You gonna have two features?
Popcorn?
Yeah, it's out there. You want some?
No.
I know. I like a chip. Give me a potato chip. Yeah.
16 grams of carbs. That's
Kettle all the way. That's a kettle.
cheese.
Netflix.
Yeah.
Everybody jumping in on the game. Netflix now has something. This is the next brand. Eat popcorn at home. I eat it at the movie sometimes.
I got me some of them. My mother was a popcorn eater.
Who was she?
My mother ate popcorn almost every day. And she loves apples. She did at least up to about 4 apples a day.
Really? That's good. I thought they keep it down.
She was very strong. Her body. Yeah.
You the teacher?
So, I'm the teacher.
All right.
Put your seatbelt on.
All right, my man.
We're gonna have a wild lesson.
Wild lesson.
Dan, from you.
Make it wild, wild, wild.
Now, everybody-
Come on, feel the noise. Girls, rock your boys.
Such a revelation.
Oh, I forgot.
Anybody need a Bible? We got a ledge over there. We should have a Bible.
We got popcorn.
Bring yours.
I always have a phone. It's lighter weight.
Oh, you
I
got
like
some.
Linda. Linda gets her workout.
All right, you can share. Still share with me.
She did it 10 times
You're
Bible.
a good sister.
Yeah, sure. Sure, it's fine.
I forgot to give Lori
James, you need a Bible?
some phone.
I could use one.
Me.
That's
Somebody
like
have a reader? We got one if you
She
need.
made me.
I like this.
That's like having a Bible right in front of
Yeah.
you. Use that bathroom, then we'll go.
What?
Oh, well.
Oh. They take you out there.
You want me to take the time?
Oh, Amtrak. Yeah, Amtrak goes right there. It's across the street. Amtrak. It might be Metro. I think they both go on the same track. Because people who work at the post office out there, they take that and get off right there.
No.
Maybe.
We didn't understand. About 10 minutes away from the train station.
That costs quite a bit, right? That's right, don't it?
Man, you know where you going?
I ride free.
Let's see. The Amtrak?
Metro is free. Metro.
That's what I take.
Yeah, Metro.
Yeah.
Amtrak is nationwide,
Yeah.
so you can go to
And then it wouldn't
California.
cost you, for a couple of dollars to take Metro.
State Metro?
Be a couple of dollars.
Metro goes all out in the suburbs.
What's suburb from? What is the suburbs?
You want to Valentine?
What is some suburbs?
All of them. You have to look it up.
Evanston?
Yeah. Well, I don't know, is Metro go to Evanston not that far? You can take Pace.
Nowhere.
You can take Pace.
Walk to Evanston.
You can walk. Everybody walk it. Everybody walk.
I would. I like to walk, but you could take, the red line and get off at Davis Street and you're you're in Evanston.
Yeah.
Or,
And then there's a bus.
I think there's 2 stops.
I don't know, it's been a long time since I've,
Yeah, well, yeah.
No, it's the purple line, get off at red line.
That's right.
The purple line.
Oh, that's right, you got transfer,
Purple line takes you to the.
switch, yeah, once you get.
what, the yellow line is what?
Skokie.
Skokie, okay, yeah. I used to ride out that way, I don't now.
I used to work on Davis Street
Skokie.
in Evanston.
Yeah.
Mhm. Many.
Not that many, Linda, come on.
Yes, it has.
It just feel like that many. What is that?
Oh. Damn track, we have track coach like for $10 for
Pretty less than that.
Depends on where you're going,
it.
cause I took Amtrak to Milwaukee, I used
You
to
say
say
Naperville?
Yeah, it was next year.
I think Metro can go out there. Try Metro,
Metro go to Naperville.
yeah, that's a closest.
Yeah, Metro goes to Naperville.
Yeah,
You have to take, you don't go to Union Station, you go to Ogilvy downtown.
Cause I take it
I'm down there.
at the end of the line.
My mom, I had to go out to
Falls.
Naperville, I had to go out and visit my mom in Naperville back in early 2000s. So I had to take the Naperville Metro.
she's still out there.
No, she died in 2009.
Oh,
First Roman Catholic Protestant demo.
I take the Amtrak that's at the end of the line, like on the Foster bus, I take it to the end of the line, that's where I take, that's where I get the train at. I'm trying to think, Dan, remember when you used to drop me off at the bus station?
Yeah,
What bus station was that?
Jefferson Park,
Jefferson Park,
and else, I know it's on Milwaukee, just north of Lawrence.
right.
Goes all over the city, you can go anywhere from there. Got trains and buses.
Yeah, that's where I
You name
catch
it.
the train goes.
One reason I moved there years ago in that neighborhood, because of that train station.
Mhm.
Cause I could go out to O'Hare, I could go anywhere in the whole city in a matter of minutes.
Cause
Yeah.
when we would go to Oak Park to the nursing.
It's a great place, good location for transportation.
Yeah.
I'm gonna move over, gotta keep a little room here, that's.
Yeah, and then I take the Foster bus.
yeah, cause you kind of far east, yeah.
Right.
Don't have anybody out there today. Maybe folks will join us out there in cyberspace.
It says Kathy on that screen over there.
Oh, okay, so Kathy.
Kathy Litchell?
Kathy,
Kathy is-
Hi, everybody.
where's she
Hi,
at?
Kathy, I thought you were upstairs probably with the kids.
Oh, no, I'm at home. I'm not feeling well.
Oh,
Okay.
no, okay,
All right, everybody pray for Kathy,
yeah.
get feeling better. It's, keep in mind the Baines who are in, Florida. That's why I'm here. Fill in for Alan. She has a medical conference down there once a year. She just goes down there and hopefully they mix a little pleasure, you know, beautiful, warm, sunny beaches and stuff. Hopefully they mix a little pleasure and
There aren't any beaches in Orlando.
there are none. There gotta be
I
some.
don't think so. It's not on the ocean.
Okay. Well, they got beaches not too far away down there,
I don't,
but,
somehow I don't think Alan and Michelle are.
They're not beach people, they're Chicago people, they're.
What chapter you going?
Well, Michelle used to go to the lake, you know.
I did when I was a kid, I never took my
So-
kids because it was always dead fish. in the water.
I got one of the worst sunburns I've ever had in my life.
Hey,
Like
Teresa.
I know.
Oh, okay.
We used to go when I was a kid.
It's the corny thing.
Thanks.
this thing's situated here.
What chapter, Dan?
We are going all the way back to Genesis. Gonna take a little detour. We've been in Revelation quite a while now, right? If you're like me, you like something else. Just to take a little break, that's all I'm saying.
You're afraid to take.
Well,
I
I'm
know,
not,
right?
I am not comfortable teaching Revelation. But I also think we've been kind of slogging through it now for about 3 months.
Oh, my goodness.
And it's nice to take it a little detour and change to something else. And Genesis, we're gonna go back to Genesis, the first book of the Bible. That's totally different, right? From Revelation.
Well, if you really look at it, it's not the same thing.
Yeah,
Just saying.
well, there's some of the messages are the same. You know,
Yeah.
the Bible has many messages all through it. So there's gonna be some messages that, and maybe we can relate to Revelation a little bit. But they're very different books, as you're gonna see here. So we'll get into that in a minute. So let's keep Al and Michelle in our prayers as they're probably heading back today from Florida. You know, you hear all these crazy things going on with these airlines lately. Got a lot of people spooked. But hopefully they'll be all right. And let's keep Jan Oki in our prayers. You probably haven't heard a lot about her. She was a member of this class. She hasn't been here now for a couple of months. She is in the hospital with pneumonia.
Oh, no.
You know how dangerous that is when you get in your 70s. Kills a lot of people, I'm afraid to say. In fact, my dad died of pneumonia in the hospital. So I know it's a serious thing. And she also has a urinary tract infection. And they think she might have kidney cancer. Just to give you an
Now,
idea.
that's very speculative.
They're doing an MRI today. Just update you a little bit. So
Well,
pray for
that's
her that this
speculation.
MRI shows that she doesn't have kidney cancer. She has a big mass on top of one of her kidneys. They think it might be cancerous, but they don't know.
Remind me to never tell you why I'm sick.
They're supposed to do a biopsy. Did they do the biopsy yet?
No,
They're supposed to do a biopsy
you shouldn't
that
bring
she.
up speculative things.
But anyways, we'll know more later this coming week. We'll probably go visit her today. We saw her the other day. And so anyways, just keep her in your prayers, and hopefully she'll be able to bounce back, you know, be her old self again, you know, someday. Right now, she's not her old self, I'm afraid. She didn't even recognize us when we came in. You get an idea.
Where did she go in?
Last week on Monday.
Somebody took her or she just?
Well, we ended up calling, or her cousin came up.
Yeah, the one that's
and
here, okay.
He
He's here
called,
today.
finally called 911 when he couldn't persuade her to go. And
Grab a chair, move a chair over.
the paramedics finally were able to persuade her to let them take her to the hospital.
Okay.
She didn't want to go, but thank the Lord, the ambulance driver got through to her, talked her into going. They have a way of doing it. They
What
have,
hospital is she?
I think, little moves they put on.
It's
Resurrection.
Resurrection. over
I don't think she's
downtown.
ready for a visit yet, but maybe
No,
next.
she can have visitors there.
Well, she can, but.
She may not recognize you.
Yeah. I don't
I'll
think so.
call her something
If-
first.
Yeah, you could try to call. So we're gonna pray for your parents, Matt, to get back safe, and for Jan. And anybody else we know of that needs a prayer, let's keep them in mind. So as I said, we're gonna take a little detour here. Everybody got a Bible? We need Genesis, the first chapter. Please turn to that book if you got a Bible, and we're going to take a look at God's first revelation to us as human beings, which is significant when you think about it, right? First time he ever really communicated with us is through Genesis, which is a collection of stories, you'll notice, not a textbook or a science book. But it's important to know that when you're studying the Bible. It is not a science book. So it doesn't always give us all the details that we would like to know. You know, we're curious, right? We like to know more details sometimes. But God in his wisdom does not give us all the details. And that'll be the case here in Genesis too, as we see. We shall see that God created a fully functioning system of life on the earth that was very complex. I'll give you one example. Does anybody know how complex gravity is? It's very complex. It has to do with the exact rotation of the earth, the exact speed. It's got to be perfect. The moon has got to be just the right distance from the earth. It's got to be rotating around too. And if that wasn't going on, all of us would fly off this earth right now. We'd be out in outer space, you know, we'd be spacemen or something. We'd be dead, in other words. So that's just one example of how God, when he set up this earth, did a lot of thinking and did a lot of precise calculations, you might say, so that we could live on this planet Earth. All right, so that's something we're going to see here, kind of maybe in between the lines a little bit, but like I said, it's not a science book, though. It's not going to give us all the details, but we can see God at work, though, as we look around and in our observing. So that he set up a complex a world for us. Without it, we cannot live on the earth. That's just one example. We could come up with many more. God created creation story also shows us God's grace. We can see some of that. You don't think of God's grace in Genesis, but we'll see some of that in there. We're going to see his generosity to mankind. We're going to see that. He could have been stingy, and he wasn't. We're going to see some generosity, and we're going to see his love at work too in Genesis. You just stay with me here, and we'll see it in the first couple chapters. Now, first of all, who do you think wrote this book? Anybody have an idea? You think it might have been Adam, right? He was the man on the scene, right? But he didn't know how to write.
How do you know?
I don't think he did. I mean, they had no school back then. I don't think he knew how to write. That's my opinion. Who do you think might have wrote the book of Genesis? Anybody have an idea? Scholars have an opinion. The book is not signed by anybody. You know, like Paul.
I said Moses wrote the first 5.
Moses is the one that's credited as having written the book of Genesis. Now, how in the world did Moses know all this stuff? He wasn't alive when the earth was formed. How do you think he might have got all this information that we're going to read here in a few minutes?
It was revealed to him.
God told him.
You think maybe God revealed it to him?
Yeah.
He revealed other things to him, didn't he?
Right.
He gave him the 10 Commandments, right? And a lot of other information, so he could lead the children of Israel and all that stuff, become the great lawgiver that he was. So I think we can all appreciate it. The scholars say it was Moses who wrote it and handed it down, and it makes sense too. I'll mention a couple things here. So God obviously revealed things to him, so we would have a foundation for our faith. This book is the foundation of our faith. I hope you realize that. Genesis. Everything in our faith stems from this book. Jesus is even in here. Not mentioned specifically, but he's there in the beginning of the creation, see? And that's going to set the stage for his coming into the world later on and redeeming the world. And so everything that we really believe is going to have its basis in this book. So I want us to see it as a foundational book, all right? Foundation of our faith. We would be at a great loss without it, believe me. It'd be kind of like building a house on sand or just on the ground, and there's no rock solid foundation. What would happen to that house? What happens when a hurricane comes along or a first storm? It's going to collapse. It's going to fall down, right? Not that we would necessarily fall down in our faith, but with the foundation, you're going to be much more stable. Okay, that's what this book does for us today. It gives us a stable foundation to build our faith on. And Moses knew that, and it also helped the Jewish folks. I'll mention that here in a minute. So we get this foundation, this thorough background. Don't you think it's important to know where we came from, Barb?
I think so.
I mean, you think we should know where we came from? I'm glad I know where we came from. There's a whole lot of people out there that don't, and they're going by these Big Bang theories, or these atheists, the atheistic scientists come up with. The latest one is we came out of a primeval ooze. In other words, we came out of there was water, and that fish, some kind of fish, developed, and that fish came on the land, and it sprouted legs, and then we eventually came from that. That's out there. That's what a lot of people believe in. They got nothing else to believe in. See, so that they believe these nonsensical theories. That's all they are, and they're always changing stuff like that because they don't know really the story of the Bible, or if maybe they've heard it, but they have not accepted it. Comment? Okay. So anyways, this gives us a much better foundation for our lives. When we know that God created us in a very unique way, and we'll get to that in a second. So we have this foundation for our faith, and a thorough background for other studies of the Bible. So we shall learn of the origin of sin. That's very important, isn't it? If we don't believe we're sinners, if we don't believe the destructiveness of sin, we don't have a whole lot of motivation to become Christians, do we? Why do we need salvation? If there isn't sin, a lot of people don't believe in sin out there. They think, oh, there's bad stuff going on. There's good stuff going on. And, people make mistakes, but they don't want to call sin sin. You see, that's the thing. God and his word, as we see all the time, through Paul and others, Jesus, we are sinners. And even in Genesis, we're going to see it coming up here very clearly. We are sinners that need to be saved. And not only for the future life, beyond this life, but for the life that we have right now. Our whole sin is darkened by sin. I mean, our whole world is darkened by sin. Don't you think that's true, Jacob? Every day, don't you think? Our world is darkness. People are out there sinning and doing different things. If they would cut back the sin or cut it out, believe me, our world would be a lot better. And we would have a much better life, and so would other people. So anyways, it's going to talk about the origin of sin. We need to know about that and its destructive effect on humanity. If you want to read about its destructiveness on humanity, just watch the news every night. One bad story after another. Murder here. You name it. There's always bad stuff going on. Not only just in our city, in other cities and other places in America too. So you got all this stuff going on, and we need to know where it came from and why it's still going on. And we're going to see that in Genesis. It's going to give us some perspective here. So what Genesis does is sets the stage for the rest of God's plan to redeem the world through his son, Jesus Christ. So it's going to set this up for us. Furthermore, we'll talk a little bit about Moses. He wrote Genesis for the people of Israel, not just for us today, thousands of years later, whom he had led out of slavery in Egypt. He had led them back to the land of their forefathers, right? And this book provides a history of those forefathers and their origins, their journeys, and their covenants with God. I think that's important. Wasn't that important for the Jewish people? Very important. They needed perspective. They needed a foundation for their faith. This history would have provided encouragement that Moses gave in Genesis. He's going to give history, would have provided encouragement and inspiration to the former slaves seeking freedom, prosperity, and the promised land. So this book was just very inspirational to them. Okay, not just to us today, it still inspires us, but that shows that it was important for them just as it is for us today. Does this sound like a very important book so far? What do you think, James?
Yeah.
Pretty important, huh?
Yeah.
Wow, it's got a lot in it. It's not all. I'm going to tell you a little more. Before we read chapter 1 in a little bit, I'll give you a little more introduction. The book of Genesis is the book of beginnings. I think we know the word Genesis means beginnings, right? Whatever begins here. All right? Anything in our life that we can think about, it begins right there. It's the beginning of time. Think of this. Time is the beginning of matter. We all know what matter is. Those are little invisible particles that make up all of us and everything in this world and universe. It's all made up of matter. And any scientist will tell you that. It's all made up of matter, and that's the beginning of matter. See, this Genesis is not just about the beginning of the world and about the beginning of the human race. It's about the beginning of the universe. God is creating the universe here that we know it's so big we can't even fathom it in our minds. It boggles us. It's just someday, I don't think we'll ever understand the total vastness of it. But anyways, that's what's going on here in the book of Genesis. It's not just the earth, even though that's the most important thing for us personally. Like I said, it's the beginning of time, the beginning of matter, the beginning of humanity. That's very important. It's the first book it's the first book in the book of books called the Bible. I think we all know the Bible is called the book of books, right? Mm-hmm. Well, now we're starting to see why. It's very important. It's very foundational to our whole life. So it is the beginning of the book of books and the beginning of all life as we know it, period. And that's pretty important. It all starts in Genesis. Everything's starting here. We're going to read about it here in a little bit. As we read the account of God's creation of the universe, the earth, and man, let's picture God as a thinker. Do you think that all the wonderful things about human beings, even though there's some evil, all the wonderful things about this earth, even though there's some dark things, do you think it could have just created out of some primeval ooze or some big bang or something like that? Does that make any sense, James? No, it took a lot of thinking to make this world come about. And just like I said, gravity. Somebody had to think of that. I don't think it just happened. You have to think about how fast is the earth going to turn. You have to be somewhat of a scientist, I guess. And how far from the sun are we going to be? How far from the moon are we going to be? And how is that moon going to travel around? All those things are in sync, you might say, in harmony, so that we can live on this planet. And it's all taking place here in Genesis. So it pictures God as a thinker. Remember, that's very important. God is a thinker. To create the earth and all that's in it, for everything around us, reflects thought, and that takes a thinker. Now, don't let anybody else ever try to convince you that this world came out of some big bang. As I said, there was an explosion and everything popped into place.
There was an article
what people believe.
years ago, if I can remember the name, but it was entitled "Philosophy of Science Quiescent on Moon Theory."
Yeah,
What the heck does that mean?
all kinds of
They
theories.
They tried to go back to the drawing board and redo.
Yeah,
how
probably couldn't do it.
moon functions and everything like that,
Yeah.
to try and simplify it, okay?
Can't.
Basically, we'll write any like design theory or complex, the moon being used in a complex situation. In other words, they wanted to simplify
Right.
the moon and say, well, it's,
Can't.
I don't wanna say they were trying to argue that it's just a block in space, but the point is we want to simplify it so much that, well, there's no real design or intelligence or,
Yeah.
it's not complex in our solar system.
Well, I don't think they could prove that.
No, they couldn't.
All right,
They-
all right.
they
You're
were
backing
quiet
up.
about it.
You're backing up what I said. That's good.
They backed out.
When you think about it, just think about this. God even thought of creating ants. Those little creatures, and they are amazing creatures. We saw a special on this Channel 11 a couple weeks ago about ants. They're amazing how they work together and they build colonies. And then if something destroys them, they just move over and start all over again. They have a system of working together. It's some kind of intelligence. They can communicate intelligently between themselves. So and he created thousands of bugs, and some of them we don't appreciate, like
You could have
mosquitoes.
left out the cockroach.
Yeah, all those things. There's all these things, and they're all part of the food chain, as it turns out. One animal's eating another, and it goes all the way up. And then we eat the animals, and we end up eating the beef, and pork and stuff like that. But anyways, it's all harmonized. But he actually thought of ants. Now, that's just, I think, kind of an amazing thought.
And
Anyway,
like bees too, I like bees. Bees work like
bees,
that.
yeah. Nobody likes bees, but we love the honey, right?
Yeah, a lot of people
All
like
right,
bees.
yeah.
We
And
don't-
they're amazing creatures too.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
we don't eat them yet.
nature definitely is an evidence of God. If you study nature, if you're open-minded to God at all, you're going to see God in the nature. All kinds of things out there, and that didn't just happen. Okay, let's read chapter 1 together, which is all about the account of creation. Diana, can you read that for us? It's kind of long. If you don't want to read all 35 verses, we'll split it up. Well, let's listen carefully to Diana's reading, because there's a lot of detail in here, and there's a lot happening. And I believe it's 7 literal days. You may disagree with me with that, because some people think one day is 1,000,000 years, like my wife, or 2,000,000 years, or whatever. But I believe that it was actually literally one day.
I want to get the right.
So it doesn't matter, though. To me, it's not a salvation
NIV.
issue.
NIV, okay, let me
But
switch to NIV.
The Hebrew does point to the fact, if you look at the language, that it was 7 literal days. So that's just one evidence that it was. All right, that's all right. Let's listen carefully as Diana reads this and listen to the detail. Okay, go ahead.
In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God saw that the light,
It's good.
She's turning page.
that the light was good. And he separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening and there was morning, the first day. And God said, "Let there be an expanse between the waters to separate water from water." So God made the expanse and separated the water under the expanse from the water above it. And it was so. God called the expanse sky, and there was evening and there was morning, the second day. And God said, "Let the water under the sky be gathered to one place, and let dry ground appear." And it was so. God called the dry ground land, and the gathered waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let the land produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants, and trees on the land that bear fruit with seed in it, according to their various kinds." And it was so. The land produced vegetation, plants bearing seed according to their kinds, and trees bearing fruit with seed in it according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning, the third day. And God said, "Let there be lights in the expanse of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them serve as signs to mark seasons and days and years. And let them be lights in the expanse of the sky to give light on the earth." And it was so. God made two great lights, the greater light to govern the day, and the lesser light to govern the night. He also made the stars. God set them in the expanse of the sky to give light on the earth, to govern the day and the night, and to separate light from darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning, the fourth day. And God said, "Let the water teem with living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the expanse of the sky." So God created the great creatures of the sea, and every living and moving thing with which the water teems, according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them and said, "Be fruitful, and increase in number, and fill the water of the seas, and let the birds increase on the earth." And there was evening, and there was morning, the fifth day. And God said, "Let the land produce living creatures according to their kinds, livestock, creatures that move along the ground, and wild animals, each according to its kind." And it was so. God made the wild animals according to their kinds, the livestock according to their kinds, and all the creatures that move along the ground according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, in our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, over the livestock, over all the earth, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, and over every living creature that moves on the ground." Then God said, "I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food. And to the beasts of the earth, and all the birds of the air, and all the creatures that move on the earth, on the ground, everything that has the breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food." And it was so. God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day.
Another 4 verses. Go into 2 a little bit.
Thus, the heavens and the earth were completed in all their vast array. By the seventh day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day, he rested from all his work. And God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done.
And this is the account of the creation of the heavens and the earth. Quite an account, right? All right, let's talk about that a little bit. God seems to have thought of everything, right? I mean, he's thinking. He's working. It says he's working. He's working in his mind, and his creative powers. He's working hard. He seems to have thought of everything to get our world started, right? When God brings humanity onto the scene, which we just read about, that is the climax of his creative work week. It wasn't the plants, it wasn't the animals, it wasn't the ground, the sea or the land. It was the human being. We are the most complex creatures on the earth. Our brains, mainly, they're very super complex. We still haven't figured them all out yet, and maybe we never will. Personally, I believe that God, as I said, created everything in chapter 1 in a literal week. Now, to me, that strengthens my faith, to know that God is powerful enough to do all this work in 7 days, 6 days, and then resting on the 7th, actually. Now, you can spread it out for 1,000,000 years, because we can't prove it. Like I said, the Bible is not a scientific book. So some people think it's going to be a figurative kind of thing, a literal, symbolic, a day or something. But you can make that choice on your own. To me, it's not a salvation issue, whether you believe the earth was created in 7 days or 7 million years or whatever. It's just a personal decision you have to make. But I think it's more strengthening to believe it's literal, because the language supports that in the Hebrew. If you look at the Hebrew, it'll say 7 literal days, not 7 million years or anything like that. It implies literal days. I've heard scholars talk about this a little bit. So, and to me, if God's powerful enough to raise Jesus Christ from the dead and other people from the dead, it takes a lot of power to do that, right? You ever seen anybody raise somebody from the dead? No. It takes a lot of power. A lot of power. If he's that powerful, let me just finish there.
Yeah, sure.
He can create the earth, just as we just read about. He's that powerful. I believe he's that powerful. And that should strengthen our faith, that he's that powerful, that he can do that. We don't have to sit around and doubt him and have doubts about that. You want to say something, Steve?
I just want to say chapter 1 is against idolatry. It's not necessarily a science report. It's against idolatry. Okay, they're in Egypt, and they're in Egypt, and they're surrounded by this polytheistic culture. Also, there was trading going on between Mesopotamia and Egypt, and so they're picking up all these creation stories.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that
They've been around a long time.
The gods are fighting one another. I mean,
Oh yeah.
In Mesopotamia, the gods are fighting. The gods battle over one another, and then out of the body of a dead god, they create the universe. Then they take the blood.
Yeah.
They take the blood out. They take the blood out of the body of the dead god to create mankind.
Aren't you glad we don't have to believe that? Come on, that is utter nonsense.
The Egyptian account, man is created from clay, like a pottery.
Yeah, well, does that make sense? We just talked about him being a thinker. Yeah, see, those theories are based in ignorance, I would say, more than anything else. Really, people don't know that they didn't maybe have a knowledge of the Bible. They didn't know anything about Christianity, so they come up with these crazy theories. And this has been going on for thousands of years, still going on today. Scientists are constantly changing their theories about how the earth got started, but they don't know. That's the bottom line. We know. They don't know. They don't want to accept God, because then they'll have to change their life, right? Doesn't accepting God in the Bible and having faith change your life? You better believe it. If it's not changing your life, then you really don't have proper faith. And then, but they know that it'll change their lives. So that's why these atheistic scientists don't want to believe these things. They would put them out of business in a way. All right, so another thing that's interesting though, in case, is our 7-day week, is based on 7 days of creation. Did you know that?
Yeah.
It still is today, all these centuries later. Go ahead.
Why scientists don't believe God creates all those things? They are also human, isn't it? Scientists, they are human, but they don't believe, even some don't believe God exists.
Some of them do,
Yeah, they
but
don't
not
believe
like we
God
do, though.
exists. But
yeah,
as,
deists or something.
as,
Intelligent design.
as
It's
the-
there.
as the Bible that we are reading right now, the Bible begin of the time of Moses. The ancestors of Moses came and gone before the revelation was given to Moses to start the Bible, which is in the beginning. Moses.
Well, they had prophets, judges, but.
They have then.
Yeah.
They have then.
Yeah.
Those scientists that we have scientists that time. They were, you see, but there wasn't anything down to say before Moses, this is what is going on. I don't know what I'm saying.
There was nothing written to show.
To show.
Yeah, to show.
Yeah, no,
what
this
what
was written
God
later,
done.
by Moses,
You see,
thousands of years later.
1,000 years of
Yeah.
later.
See, God didn't, write this all down, but how he communicated back then, before Moses, was kind of like, he spoke to people.
Yeah.
He was like a counselor. He come down and talk to Adam and Eve, like we see that in the garden here, coming up, and things like that. So, you're right, they were in ignorance for many years. They didn't know a lot of things. Only certain people that, like the patriarchs, they're the ones that talked with God, like Abraham. See, so he had some ideas about how these things probably
How this
took
thing
place,
goes on.
but it wasn't written down, you're right.
The one who is not in the shoe of Abraham will not believe whom you are speaking. He is thinking that you are speaking with another human
Yeah.
society. You see, not probably is God or a spirit. But as for Abraham, believe that I'm speaking with spirits that creates everything. But the one who is not in the shoe of me as a Christian don't believe what I'm doing. Now, even now, that's how it is.
Yeah.
So we find all these things. The difficult about it is the beginning. We don't know why God didn't, and he said somebody to wrote these things from the beginning.
Well, that's just part of his wisdom. He
Write it down.
gradually,
Write it
he
down.
works slowly sometimes,
Nobody can read.
Nobody can read. But God wonderfully.
I wish he would have.
God wonderfully. How do you
Because
find
God had people that he spoke to who gave the word to the people, like the prophets, Samuel and all those
Yeah,
guys.
that was just his method.
If you say nobody can read, nobody can write. If you can't read, you can't
Yeah,
write.
back then they couldn't.
Then when did they learn to read and write?
Even the Israelites, they didn't know how to
wrote
read.
some, but they didn't write English.
Even the Israelites, it has to do with languages. Israelites didn't know how to read. That's why they had to have people like Moses and Samuel and others speak to them. They would tell them God's word. They would stand at attention for hours while they taught them God's word, because they didn't know how to read. So this is a great invention. We are privileged, in the history of man, to be able to read a Bible for ourselves. This is unheard of, years ago. And I agree. I wish God would have revealed this beginning of the world sooner through the written word, but he had his reasons. And if you know anything about God, he works kind of slowly. Things evolve with God, but he works very fine. He's always got a plan, and things will come about for the best in the long run. But we don't always see that. We can't always see it in our limited vision and wisdom. But I'm glad we have it today.
Yes,
That's what we have to be concerned
I'm
about
not
most.
interceding you, but what I mean is that sometimes when scientists, somebody who has learned so much, will come out and say that God self is not exist.
Yeah.
To me, a layman like this, I look at him and say, look at this fool.
Well,
You see?
So the Bible says, ever
exactly.
learning and never coming to the knowledge.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, scientists are just human. There are Christian scientists that believe Genesis like we do. And they see intelligence in the creation. And they will have their theories that line up with the Bible. And then you got the atheist scientists, which are the majority, unfortunately. They're the ones that dominate with the Big Bang Theory and stuff like that. And that's what's taught in the public schools. See?
Just saying.
That's
Big
what I was
Bang-
taught in high school.
Big Bang is not, to me, it's not unbelievable that God caused the Big Bang. See, the Big Bang, but scientists have no cause. I believe there was a cause, God caused it, and bang, there it was.
Well, we don't know how fast it happened. Like I said, it's not scientific.
Well,
book.
7 days,
But
there you go.
If it was a bang, this is the bang,
Yeah,
right here.
yeah.
7 day
That's what I'm
bang,
saying.
or
That's
whatever
what I'm
period of time
That
it
was a
was.
radical theory when it first came out, because
Yeah.
they didn't like, they said because the Big Bang says there's a beginning, and the Bible says there's a beginning.
Yeah.
And they don't like the Big Bang because that sounds too much like the Bible.
Yeah,
So it
well,
looks
whatever.
like there's a cause.
They wouldn't break it down like
They
we're
don't
breaking it down
define
here,
God.
but whatever.
It's interesting that even though the first verse is God created the heavens and the earth, we're not really told where the earth comes from.
It was already there, that's what people.
Something was already there were
Already there.
waters there,
Yeah,
it doesn't tell
Mhm,
us.
mhm.
and God divided everything.
Well, whatever he reformed it, whatever it was, there might have been matter, but he reformed it all into what we have today.
All the existence.
Yeah,
All right, let's move on a little bit further. We got a little more time. There's something altogether distinct about God's creation of the man and the woman. That's why I want to get across today very importantly. The plants and animals and stars were not made in his image, right? Only men and women. That's very, very important. That makes us very special, very unique as human beings. And that's something we need to understand and make that part of our witness to other people when we talk to them about why we believe. So, you know, a lot of people today believe that we're just a higher form of animal, right? That's common. You go to the zoo, Lincoln Park Zoo, example, we went to the ape, building down there. They have all these wonderful apes and gorillas in there and all this stuff. And right on the window, right next to the window, was a sign implying that we're all animals.
primate.
You're just, in other words, you just came to look at your family through the window. I wanted to tear the sign down. That's not true. It's a lie. But that's what they believe, and that's what they perpetuate. Because obviously those zookeepers down there are scientists that don't believe in God. They believe in evolution. So this is what's common out there. Even in high school, my high school biology teacher tried to teach me and others that we're just animals. There's no difference between a gorilla and a human being, which is nonsense. And this woman was Jewish. You'd think she would have had a little faith in God, but she was teaching atheism, as Jewish as could be. But anyways, that's the way a lot of Jewish are atheists, actually, in the way they teach. But that's a side issue. But anyways, the creation of man and women, as we see in this chapter, is distinctly different from the plants and the animals. And here's why. They do not bear God's likeness. We do. That doesn't mean we're exactly like God, or we'd be perfect, but we have some likeness, and that means we can relate to God. We can have a relationship with God that the plants and the animals cannot. That's very significant. We got to know that. Again, let's go on to into that a little further. This means that out of all the things God created, only men and women have a heart to love God. Think about that. Can an animal love God? A bear, a dog, a cat, gorilla? No, they can't love God. They might love their trainer, they might love us a little bit because we feed them, but they cannot have a heart for God. We can. Do they have a brain to know God? Can any animal have a brain to know God? No, they don't have the capacity up here to know God. That's why there's a vast difference between our capacity and any animal's capacity. That's why they cannot speak and talk like we can. That's a significant difference between us and the animals. So they don't have a brain to know God, but God gave us the brain so we could know Him. Do they have the capacity within them to obey God? Can animals do that? James? Can a dog obey God? No. He can obey us maybe if we take him to training school and we give him some treats, right? Yeah, they'll do anything for a treat, but they cannot obey God. See, that's a significant difference.
Him either, right?
Pardon?
They can't disobey God either.
No, but they can't obey Him. That's my point. They don't have the capacity, again, goes back to capacity, brain capacity. They cannot obey God, just like they can't love God, they can't know God like we can. So that's what we're getting at here. When he says we're created in God's image, we have these capacities to do this. They do not. That's something you can bring up with your friends if you ever want to have a discussion, about God and the Bible and your faith. Get them thinking. Most people don't think about this stuff. They don't. They just don't think about it. They think, oh, well, we're just all in this creation together and we're just a higher form of animal. But no. Another thing, I'll just throw this in for extra credit, they don't have a conscience. No animal has a conscience. That little voice inside that says, hey, you shouldn't do that. You've all heard that voice, right? We all have a conscience. Animals do not have a conscience. The only thing they have is instincts that guide them, that God gave them. And that allows them to exist in the world and not get killed off. They have these instincts that tell them to go this way or that way or things like that. And it's very important that they have that. But they don't have a conscience, and more importantly, they don't have a soul. The Bible teaches us that we have a soul that lives on forever. When this life is over, our bodies are finished with, we have a soul that lives on. The animals do not.
Well.
No way. Now, some people, maybe Barb thinks it, but they think they have a soul. People like to think that. That's why they have sometimes funeral services for animals today.
I know.
Years ago, they wouldn't do that. But today, people are doing that kind of stuff. But I don't believe they have a soul. The Bible teaches us that we have a soul. It never mentions anything about animals having a soul. So when they die, they go back into the ground, and that's it. That's how we should view it. When we die, we go in the ground. We have a soul that rises up, a spiritual part of our being. It's not the physical body that we have now. The Bible's very clear about that. That soul will live on in a good place or a bad place, depending on how we lived this life and accepted Jesus and followed him or we didn't. That's going to be the big divider right there. Did we follow Jesus or we didn't? And so the animals, like I pointed out, they don't have the capacity to follow Jesus, period. So that's something to keep in mind, that this first chapter of Genesis brings out. That means that we human beings can relate to God and reflect something of his character. Okay, that's what this is all about. Animals cannot. They cannot relate. They cannot reflect God's character or his nature, and that all the rest of his creation can do, us human beings, that is. So that makes us very special. And we can feel good about that. We shouldn't get off, have a big head about it or anything like that. Oh, we're so special, we're going to lord it over the animals. No, we don't have to do that. We're going to take care of animals as best we can. Put the priority on other people because they're on a higher level than the animals. And, people are up here in God's view. Animals are second and maybe plants third. We saw that in Jonah. Talked about that in Jonah, right? How he ignored the people in the city who needed saving because he was concerned that his plant was burning up. He had a priority, a misplaced priority there. See? So that made him kind of an ungodly person. He had it backwards. Instead of prioritizing people, he prioritized the plant. That's exactly opposite of what God wants us to do. Okay. Any questions? I guess that's about it. We'll get back to this study at some point. I'm going to suggest to Alan that we go back to Genesis when we finish up Revelation. Okay. I think he'll do it because we haven't been in Genesis for quite a while in this class. It's been several years, actually. We've been going through the whole Bible, if you notice. Yeah. We started in the Gospels. And I didn't hit all the Old Testament, but we've been going through the New Testament, and it's been a couple of years since we got back to the Old Testament, actually. So I'm going to suggest we get back to this eventually, but I hope you see a little bit better about how important this book is, how foundational it is to our faith. Because without it, we'd really be kind of on shifting sand. We wouldn't be as secure in our faith as we are today. Yeah. Any questions so far?
It gives us some answers to things that we couldn't be answered otherwise. To me, it's ridiculous to get into scientific controversies around the book because science can't answer where things come from. All scientists can do is extrapolate backwards from what they see now and assume that things have followed a certain progression or have remained the same.
Yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty out there. A lot of theories. That's so much of it is, I think.
And the age of the earth is.
the thing is-
thing.
All their theories are on shifting sand though, because they keep changing them. I've had two or
Yeah.
three major theories change since I was in high school. See, because they keep finding new evidence, and so then they adjust it. See, they'll adjust it here, a little there, a little there. And so they're constantly, I don't think they'll ever come up with a proper theory. The theory is right here, is what I'm saying. For how the world was created.
Create a creation event and they can't do it, so.
We need to stand on this book of Genesis, that's what I'm saying. Stand on it and make it part of your testimony. When you talk to other people about becoming Christians, or why you believe, take them back to Genesis, and there's a lot of good things in there. And maybe they'll start to see the light, just the difference between us and animals should get them thinking, right? Most people don't think about these things, like I said. They don't have the capacity to do certain things that we do. So there's a distinct difference. If we can just show them that, we just might get them on the track to thinking about believing in God. Because that's how he set things up, and that will never change. Animals will never have the capacities that we do. And if anything, AI will try to catch up with us, but that's not an animal, that's a human.
Do you have the structure of the book in your notes?
Structure of the book.
of the book.
Yeah,
Of Genesis.
The structure of the book, how the book,
yeah.
is structured, okay, in your notes.
I've structured the book here in my Bible. Yeah.
So, i.e. to break it down, by sections,
Yeah.
explain to them by section what the book is, the book is coming across. That's what I'm just asking.
Yes, I have all that right here. You want to see it?
Good.
I'll show you. A very good study Bible here. Some of these things I've said are out of my study Bible. And it's right on track. It's right on track.
But yes, animals can't obey God because they were not created. Only mankind were created. That is the beginning. They say Adam and then Eve came out from Adam. Is that not so? So only human that was created from a creator was Adam. That is what God called the image of God. And the Eve was from Adam,
Yeah.
as the Bible said. But as for birds, animals, plants, all those things, they were commanded out. They were commanded out.
Yeah.
So God said, mankind should take in charge of them. That's the reason why we have dogs, even tiger. If you write tiger up to sometimes, he obey your language, he obey your performance. Even cattle, those kind of things. If you see the cattle right, the way they command their cattle and move with them, you can see how they obey them. So we have the distinct to obey God, but animals supposed to obey us.
Yes, we have
Yes.
dominion.
Animals
Yeah.
supposed to obey us.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for those
good
comments.
that you bring it up so that we carry on from there.
We'll get into it more. There's a lot in here. This book is very
Yeah.
deep. Very important
Next time,
we get it
age of the
down.
earth. Let's bring that in.